This is a Pubcast Shot. I'm John Loomer.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Let's go.
So I've talked a lot about applying a more simplified approach to meta advertising in prior episodes. And so today, I want to dig in a little bit deeper to discuss what exactly that means. I know this isn't popular. You can't sell courses on taking a simplified approach. More complicated, more sophisticated sounds better, but it often isn't. So a whole lot of performance problems come from advertisers who overcomplicate things. They narrow the audience. They remove placements. They use manual bidding. They create several campaigns and ad sets, or they add any complexity when it's not necessary. It's not that you should never do any of these things, but advertisers can make the results worse by trying to do too much. So today, we'll talk about what those complications are and how they can hurt you. Then we'll discuss the simplified approach that you should take instead. So it's weird. Advertisers often have this incessant need to overcomplicate things. My theory is that this comes from a feeling that it's necessary in order to provide value. You have clients and you need to prove that you're actually doing something that's important. More complicated is better. But much of this busyness is counterproductive. You rarely need to narrow your audience. If you're optimizing for a conversion, especially a purchase, this is often unnecessary. You might use remarketing sometimes, but that should be the exception rather than the rule. Make sure to refer to a prior episode where I talked about this. You rarely need to create multiple ad sets, which probably sounds crazy to a lot of people who've been doing this for years and years and years like I have. It's an old school approach of creating several ad sets for different targeting segments, different ad sets for various interests, lookalikes, remarketing. I did this too, but your audience is usually expanded now, especially when optimizing for conversions. So this is inefficient. If you aren't driving up costs due to auction overlap, because each ad set wants to reach the same people, you're driving up costs with audience fragmentation. You also rarely need to make other customizations, like manual bidding or removing placements. Most advertisers think that these complications are necessary because there was a time when they were, but Meta specifically discourages it now. I know a lot of advertisers resist this, and I get it. There are times when some complexity is necessary, but you should prioritize a simplified approach and go from there. So what does a simplified approach look like? It's keeping campaign construction as simple as possible. It's starting simple and maybe adding complexity later because you have a specific reason for doing so to solve a problem. Understand the impact of each new campaign or ad set that you create. I'm going to assume that you don't have an unlimited budget. And if you don't have an unlimited budget, it means spreading the budget you have across all of your assets. So let's say you have a budget of $100 per day. You're initially spending $100 per day on one campaign and one ad set. But then you decide to create 4 more ad sets. Now you're spending $20 per day per ad set. Volume is necessary to get optimal results. And also, the more fragmented you are, the less meaningful your results are. They aren't stable and they're not predictable. So with that understood, prioritize the bottom of your funnel and work up from there. Ideally, you will run a sales campaign optimized for purchase events. It could be a single ad set. If not sales, prioritize building your email list with a leads campaign. It sounds nuts, but you might not need to do anything else. Just focus on conversions. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about awareness and traffic and engagement? Only consider a campaign for top of the funnel optimization if it doesn't steal budget from the bottom of your funnel. There's a reason for that. The results from traffic and engagement campaigns are often really bad and low quality. I realize that the idea is that you're building up awareness, but it's rarely worth the money. Now, if you're optimizing for conversions, you should rarely need to make any customizations to the campaign and ad set. I realize that the urge is there to make changes, but keep your hands off, at least at the start. Don't use manual bidding, manual placements, or any of the targeting controls. Use Advantage Plus Audience. As for ads, you can get a bit more creative there. It's okay to make use of the multiple text options or to create multiple ads using different formats. But don't create more than 6 ads per ad set. Even Meta says, don't do this, saying that there's no benefit beyond 6. And really, you might not need more than 2 or 3. There's one more complexity that's common. So should you create a separate campaign and ad set for testing? Many advertisers do. But in most cases, it's not worth the extra budget that you're spending on it. If your ads aren't working the way you want, simply create new ads for the active campaigns. I know, sounds too simple. So let's recap. Number 1, minimize the number of campaigns and prioritize conversions. Only consider top of the funnel optimization campaigns if you aren't stealing budget from your conversion campaigns. Number 2, minimize the number of ad sets within each campaign. You can easily get away with a single ad set in most cases. And number 3, minimize the customizations you make to ad sets, especially when optimizing for conversions. Now look, it doesn't mean that you should never add complexity. Not what I'm saying here. Sometimes you may need to create an extra campaign, an extra ad set or 2, or maybe there will be a reason to customize targeting or placements or something else. Prioritize a simplified, simplistic, minimalistic approach. Only add those complications when they're necessary to solve a problem. I've discussed some of these problems on prior episodes, so go back and check them out. When you consolidate your budget like this toward fewer campaigns and ad sets, your results suddenly mean more. It's much easier to see what's working and what's not. It gives each ad set a better chance to perform because you're giving it more budget. And in the end, you can focus on the areas where you can make the most impact. So your ad copy, your creative, your offer, the landing page, attribution, getting all that right. It's not like you're completely hands off and doing nothing. I found that it's freeing to take this approach because you're not distracted by a million things that could be impacting your results. If you want to learn more about taking a simplified approach, check out my blog post at johnloomer.com/simple. Thanks again so much for joining me on the pubcast. I really do appreciate it. And if you're a regular or you want to become a regular, there are a couple things you can do. So first up, no matter where you are, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on my website, somewhere else, make sure that you subscribe, rate, and review. This, more than anything else, will help me grow, and I truly appreciate it. Second, subscribe to podcast alerts. When you do, I will notify you every time I've published a new episode. It will include a brief explanation, a brief summary of what was discussed, and a link to my website where that podcast and transcript are embedded. To subscribe, go to johnloomer.com/podcast. Either way, I appreciate you. Thanks so much again for joining me. Until next time, do awesome things.
I'm out.